True. Nervous, very, very dreadfully nervous. I have been and am, but why, oh why will you say I am mad? You see, this disease, it sharpened my senses, not destroyed them, not dulled them, quite the opposite. My hearing, above all, became acutely, exquisitely sensitive. Every whisper, every rustle, every sigh, I heard them all. I heard all things in the heavens and the earth, even things in hell. So I ask you again, how dare you call me mad? It's preposterous. Observe how calmly, how healthily I can tell you this tale. I can still feel the dread creeping up my spine, a cold, clammy hand tightening its grip around my heart. The memory, as vivid as the day it unfolded, haunts my waking hours and invades my dreams. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we delve into the depths of this chilling narrative, let me assure you, dear listener, that I am not the raving lunatic you may perceive me to be. The origin of the idea I cannot pinpoint, but like a venomous seed, it took root in my mind, growing with each passing moment. The old man, you see, had done me no wrong. He had never insulted me, never raised his voice, never even looked at me with anything but kindness. And as for his gold, I harboured no desire for it. No, it was something far more sinister, far more chilling that drove me to the brink. It was his eye. Yes, his eye. That ghastly pale blue eye, clouded over with a film that sent shivers down my spine. Like a vulture's eye, it seemed to pierce through me, to see into the darkest recesses of my soul. Every time it fell upon me, my blood ran cold. The mere thought of it sent a wave of nausea through me. And so gradually, insidiously, the idea crept into my mind, worming its way deeper and deeper until it consumed me entirely. I would rid myself of the eye, of its haunting gaze, forever. Now you may be quick to judge, to label me as mad. Madmen, you believe, act without reason, without logic. But I assure you, my dear listener, madness was far from my mind. I proceeded with the utmost care, with a cunning that would impress even the most seasoned detective. It was not a crime of passion, no outburst of uncontrolled rage. It was a carefully calculated act, planned and executed with meticulous precision. Every detail, every possible outcome had been meticulously considered. I knew I couldn't act rashly, couldn't risk arousing suspicion. So I decided to become the very embodiment of kindness, showering the old man with an affection I had never before displayed. I would visit him in his chambers, inquiring after his well-being, engaging him in idle chatter. And he, the poor unsuspecting soul, would never suspect the sinister thoughts swirling within my mind. Every night, as the clock struck 12, I would embark on my secret mission. With the stealth of a cat, I would creep towards his room, my bare feet making no sound upon the cold, hard floorboards. The old man's door, creaking slightly with age, became my nightly challenge, my adversary in this macabre game. Inch by inch I would ease it open, my heart pounding in my chest, my breath catching in my throat. Into this void I would shine my lantern, a single ray of light cutting through the darkness, aimed with unwavering precision at the source of my torment, the vulture eye. My resolve, however, did not waver. Each night, my determination grew stronger, fueled by a potent mix of fear and loathing. And so, the nightly ritual continued. The stealthy approach, the agonizingly slow opening of the door, the single ray of light piercing the darkness, all performed with the precision of a seasoned actor on a stage. The old man, oblivious to my nightly intrusions, slept soundly, his chest rising and falling with each peaceful breath. Oh, how I envied him his tranquility. To be free from the torment, the gnawing fear that had taken root in my soul. But the eye, even in slumber, held its power over me. 7 nights. 7 nights I had stood in that suffocating darkness, my gaze fixed upon that hateful eye, waiting for it to open, to unleash its icy grip upon my sanity. 7 nights of anticipation, of frustration, of a growing sense of dread that gnawed at my insides. My body ached with the tension, my mind throbbed with the effort of maintaining such unwavering focus. Yet I dared not falter. Each night, I told myself, would be the night the eye would finally open, granting me the opportunity to strike, to silence its malevolent gaze forever. The floorboards creaked beneath my feet, a familiar sound that no longer sent shivers down my spine. I'd become accustomed to the darkness, to the musty scent of the old man's room, to the oppressive silence that hung in the air like a shroud. On the seventh night, as I stood there, lantern in hand, a strange feeling washed over me. A flicker of doubt, a whisper of remorse, so faint I almost dismissed it as a trick of my exhausted mind. Could I really do this? Could I take the life of another human being, even one whose eye filled me with such primal terror? The old man stirred in his sleep, and for a moment our eyes met. His gaze, clouded with age, held no malice, no awareness of my presence, no hint of the torment he inflicted upon me with that single piercing eye. As quickly as it had surfaced, the doubt receded, replaced by the familiar surge of determination. It was too late to turn back now. I had come too far, endured too many sleepless nights to abandon my plan. The old man shifted again, his frail body trembling slightly beneath the thin blankets. A low moan escaped his lips, a sound laden with unspoken fear that sent a chill down my spine. Had he sensed my presence? No, I told myself. It was impossible. He was an old man, his mind clouded with age, his sleep plagued by nightmares. And yet, the fear in his voice, the tremor in his hand, ignited a flicker of terror within me, a primal fear that threatened to consume me entirely. The eighth night arrived, cloaked in a silence so profound it felt as though the world itself were holding its breath. The air hung heavy with anticipation, a suffocating blanket pressing down upon me, threatening to smother the last vestiges of my resolve. Yet I felt strangely exhilarated, as if the culmination of my meticulous planning, my nightly rituals, had imbued me with a heightened sense of awareness, a clarity of purpose that bordered on the divine. My hand, usually steady as a rock, trembled slightly as I reached for the old man's doorknob. Slowly, with infinite care, I depressed the latch, wincing at the faint metallic click that echoed in the stillness of the night. The old man's door creaked open, a sound both agonizing and familiar, each groan of the hinges a testament to my nightly intrusions. I paused on the threshold, my body a silhouette against the faintest sliver of moonlight filtering in from the hallway, my breath catching in my throat as if a giant hand squeezed the air from my lungs. For a fleeting moment, I was paralyzed by indecision, my mind awash in a torrent of conflicting emotions, fear and excitement, dread and anticipation, all swirling within me like a tempestuous sea. Then, with a deep breath, I banished the doubt, the lingering remnants of human compassion, and stepped into the room. The air, thick with the cloying scent of decay and dust motes dancing in the faint light, enveloped me like a shroud. Time seemed to stretch, each second an eternity as I stood over the old man. The rise and fall of his chest beneath the thin blankets, the gentle rasp of his breath, the faintest hint of a snore escaping his lips, all served as a stark reminder of the life I was about to extinguish. My hand, clutching the lantern so tightly my knuckles had turned white, trembled with a mixture of fear and determination. The old man shifted in his sleep, a low groan escaping his lips, a sound laden with a lifetime of unspoken fears and anxieties. His eyelids fluttered open, revealing for the briefest moment a sliver of that pale blue eye, the source of my months-long torment. The sight sent a jolt of pure primal fear coursing through me, a fear so intense it threatened to shatter the fragile facade of control I had so carefully constructed around myself. The old man's eyes sprang wide, his gaze locking onto mine with a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. A strangled cry escaped his lips, a sound that ripped through the oppressive silence of the room like a shard of glass. I froze, momentarily paralyzed by the sheer intensity of the old man's terror. It was as if his fear, his understanding of the inevitable, had somehow seeped into the very air we breathed, infecting me with its icy grip. The lantern wavered in my trembling hand, casting grotesque dancing shadows on the walls, transforming the familiar confines of the room into a macabre stage for the unfolding tragedy. And then, as quickly as it had surfaced, the old man's fear subsided, replaced by a chilling resignation. His gaze, no longer frantic, held a strange serenity, an acceptance of the inevitable that both terrified and fascinated me. In the face of such profound resignation, my own fear seemed to dissipate, replaced by a chilling sense of purpose. The deed was done. Silence, heavy and absolute, descended upon the room, a stark contrast to the frantic heartbeat that only moments before had pounded in my ears. The old man's lifeless eyes stared up at me, the pale blue now dulled, the film that had so terrified me strangely still. A strange calm settled over me, a sense of detachment as if I were merely an observer to this gruesome act, not the perpetrator. I had to act swiftly, decisively. The night, though waning, still held the potential for discovery. With a methodical precision that surprised even me, I set about the grim task of concealing my crime. The old man, despite his age, proved surprisingly heavy. Each creak of the floorboards beneath his weight, each muffled thud as I maneuvered his stiffening limbs, sent shivers down my spine. But fear, I realized, was a luxury I could no longer afford. The hours crawled by, each tick of the clock a hammer blow against my raw nerves. The floorboards, now meticulously scrubbed and relaid, held no trace of the night's grisly work. The old man, his dismembered body concealed beneath the very floor he had walked upon in life, was now nothing more than a chilling memory, a phantom haunting the furthest recesses of my mind. Dawn, when it finally arrived, brought with it a wave of exhaustion so profound I could barely stand. And yet beneath the fatigue, a strange elation bubbled within me. I had done it. I had silenced the vulture eye, escaped its haunting gaze. The world, bathed in the soft golden light of a new day, seemed different somehow, sharper, more defined. I drew a deep breath, savoring the sweet taste of freedom, the intoxicating knowledge that I had outsmarted fate itself. The veil of sanity, I realized, was a powerful tool, a shield that could deflect even the most astute observation. It was midday when the knocking came, a sharp, insistent rapping against the front door that shattered the illusion of normalcy I had so carefully constructed around myself. My heart leapt into my throat, a drumbeat of fear against my ribs. Had they come? Had someone somehow pieced together the fragments of my carefully orchestrated facade and glimpsed the darkness that lay beneath? I took a deep breath, willing my trembling hands to stillness. Panic, I reminded myself, was the hallmark of the guilty. I was innocent. The old man was gone, vanished into the countryside as I had so carefully explained to anyone who would listen. With a calmness that surprised even me, I strode towards the front door, my hand reaching for the knob. My mind racing ahead, anticipating the accusations, the probing questions, the inevitable unraveling of my carefully constructed lies. 3 men stood on the doorstep, their faces grim, their eyes hard and unforgiving. Police officers, they introduced themselves, their voices devoid of warmth, their very presence a tangible threat. A shriek, they explained, had been heard in the night, a cry of terror that had roused a neighbor from his slumber. Suspicions had been aroused, whispers of foul play circulating like wildfire through the neighborhood. My blood ran cold. They knew. Somehow they knew. I feigned ignorance, ushering the officers into my humble abode, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to maintain a facade of composure. The walls, once familiar and comforting, now seemed to press in upon me, the air thick with suspicion and unspoken accusations. Every creak of the floorboards beneath our feet, every rustle of fabric as the officers brushed past me sent shivers down my spine. They wanted to see the old man's room, of course. I led them there, my heart pounding a frantic tattoo against my ribs, my mind a whirlwind of desperate thoughts. I had cleaned everything, disposed of every trace of evidence, or so I had believed. But what if I had missed something? What if, in my haste, I'd overlooked some tiny detail, some seemingly insignificant clue that would betray my carefully constructed facade? The officers moved about the room, their eyes scanning every nook and cranny, their very presence a violation of the sanctuary I had created for my dark secret. I stood there, rooted to the spot, my gaze fixed upon their every move, my mind racing ahead, anticipating their every question, every accusation. They would find nothing, I told myself, clinging to that sliver of hope like a drowning man to a piece of driftwood. I had been too meticulous, too thorough in my efforts to erase all traces of my crime. A strange sensation began to creep into my consciousness. It started as a faint hum, barely perceptible above my own ragged breathing. Gradually it grew louder, evolving into a steady, rhythmic thumping. The sound increased in volume, pounding in my ears, reverberating through my body. It was the old man's heart. Even in death it mocked me, a relentless reminder of the life I had taken. The officers, oblivious to the sound, continued their inspection. They had to hear it. The sound was deafening, all-consuming, impossible to ignore. I wanted to scream, to confess my crime and beg for their forgiveness, but the words stuck in my throat, trapped by a terror so profound. The room spun, the walls closing in upon me, the faces of the officers blurring into grotesque masks, and still the relentless thumping of the old man's heart continued, driving me deeper into madness. I shrieked, my voice cracking, "Dissemble no more, I admit the deed! Tear up the planks! Here, it is the beating of his hideous heart!" If you enjoyed this narrative, please subscribe to Sperlin TV and ring that bell so you don't miss any new stories. Thank you!